Ed Gerrish, welcome to the Vermillion Unplugged. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Good, good. So if people are watching on the video on Facebook, even Spotify video, we're at it's 19 Brewing Company, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I love the location.
Yeah.
This is nice. Well, before we get into it, I always ask, what do you do?
Yeah, that's a good question right now. Right now, my day job is I'm a associate professor at USD, but my hobby job is owning one of the two owners of 19 Brewing Company, downtown Vermillion.
Now I want to get into that.
Yeah.
So tomorrow I'll be doing Katie, and right now I got you. What got you started on this stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I've been homebrewing for 17 years. So I've been making my own beer since I was in an apartment in Washington, D.C. I remember I was watching TV and there was a commercial. Sam Adams Brewing, which is a big brewery out in Boston, had an ad for like this long shot homebrew contest. And I had no interest in joining the contest, but I was like, oh, I didn't know you could make beer at home. So I ordered their kits online. It was like, I don't know, $100 or something. And I made beer for the first time. And it was terrible. And and I made my friend sick and he had a headache. But I really liked the process and, enjoyed it. I had made a lot of mistakes. And so, and then I did so I was in DC. I went to graduate school at Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana. There were, I think at the time, 3 or 4 places making their own beer. One of our friends was I think president at the time of Upland Brewing Company, which is a fairly big brewing company in Bloomington. So I got some of the behind the scenes about how all that worked. And they were making a lot of changes at the time. So I could see them expand their production and all of that. And Bloomington is like a town of like 80,000 people. It's a Big Ten, home of a Big Ten school. So it's similar to Vermillion in that it's like a town and gown relationship and that the town sort of revolves around the university, but it's much larger. So it has the capacity for some breweries. And then we moved to Vermillion in 2015. And by that time I had scaled up my brewing, quite a few times. So every time we moved, I felt like either I gave away my old stuff or built new stuff and I was sort of getting a little better at it. And so we moved to Vermillion and for a while we were here and there's no brewery. And like the refrain we hear a lot of times, oh, Vermillion needs a brewery, Vermillion needs a brewery. And there was sort of nobody who was the right person to do it. And so in 2021, actually, we related, working on, my wife and Katie were working on something for Kelsey, one of her campaigns. And Katie, my business partner, said, Vermillion really needs a brewery. I would love to run a brewery, but I don't know how to make beer. And my wife was like, well, Ed knows how to make beer, but has no interest in running a tap room, right? Because we had little kids and, staying up late, It seems like a bad idea, seems like not what I do anymore. As I'm, hit 40, I go to bed earlier and earlier. And so the idea of being up, late at night running a bar wasn't really my idea. So good time. So we got together and we started thinking through like, all right, are we compatible in terms of our vision of what a brewery would look like? And that worked out really well. And then we started doing more and more, branding and marketing and finding revenue loan investors and just one step at a time. And so it took us 2.5 years basically from the time that we met and decided, all right, we're going to do this brewery to actually being open. So it was a long time behind the scenes and it was fun because there was a time in which people were reflecting back to me. Like I had students say, hey, did you hear there's a brewery opening in town? I was like, yes, in fact, I have heard there's a brewery opening in town.
If you go there, you get extra credit.
No, never. And then actually what happened is the weekend that it opened, I was teaching class and everything. And some students found out like then, right? They had been my students for years, but I had no idea. I mean, I just never even talked about it in class. And so they found out just then the brewery was opening. So that's how it happened. We knew, both of us know, so I'm at the university and Katie's at the university in different roles. And we knew we were not going to be leaving our job. So we have Mike, who's like around the corner from us in the other room, who's our head brewer. We have Kayla, who's our sort of full-time bartender and does some management in the tap room. So we have really good staff that helps to run the day-to-day of it. But we sort of put together the structure and we still do a lot. I was just doing some maintenance right outside earlier today because it's an old building still and it needs a lot of work. And so that's kind of my job for the most part. Yeah.
It's nice. Now, before I get into it.
Anything that looks nice is Katie. That's not me. I have no good design. That's not part of my DNA. That's all her.
Okay. So first, So you're 40? I thought we were the same age.
I have no idea how old you are, but yeah,
I just turned 29.
okay. Well, yep, yep, I'm 40. So
One thing that we noticed so for us, for me and Myra, we were like, all these people look way young. And someone said it's probably like the cold air freezing the skin.
yeah, that's probably what it is. Yeah, it keeps us nice and preserved. And actually, at some point you lose track of. So I'm actually 41, but I just sort of forgot how old I am.
40.
Yeah, at some point. Yeah, that's right. I'll be 40. And now this is the age where you go backwards, right? So now I'm 39.
Sweet. So you guys opened in
November. Yeah, November last year.
So you're about to hit a year. Almost.
Yeah, we're 7 months in. Yeah, I mean, I think anybody who's started a new business or tried a new venture, I mean, just knows the first year. So you've had my wife on the podcast, and so we talked about how a lot of this comes from the fact that my wife started the Bean, is this tiny little coffee bar where Blue Monarch is now, and then did Cow and Spoon, and she had the business background where she's a meeting and event planner. And so all of those were sort of the steps we needed to get to the point where like the brewery was a venture. This is I mean, both of us agree, a totally different scale of thing, of an adventure, because it's just, we knew, with a brewery, there's so much capital and so much, like, basically stainless steel. I mean, I don't know, outside of Polaris and, Masaba, I think we have the most stainless steel in Vermillion, right? I guess maybe USD. But it's just a big capital enterprise. And so it's a lot to go from starting with the water, the basic ingredients, right, up to making beer itself at the scale and the volume that we're doing here.
Now, so with the almost, well, you said 7 months into it, have you learned anything new? Something in pros and cons? You're like, hey, this is not what I thought it was going to be. Or like, oh yeah, you know what? Now we're raking in the money. This is the best.
So literally, definitely not raking in the money. This is the best. I think that we really appreciate the support that the community's had. It's been fantastic. And every day I'm learning something new about whatever it is that I'm learning. I mean, I think it's helpful to be a little bit handy for these kind of things. I'm a little bit handy. The things I definitely stay away from, but I'm handy enough to get through some of the, so that helps a lot to keep on my side of it. I'm sure Katie feels the same way in terms of the marketing and promotion. Like there are things she's learning that this works or that doesn't work, or, we're learning more about all of that. It's just a really fun experience. So again, my day job is I'm a professor at the university, and sometimes, and I worked with your wife, she was in the department, and sometimes there's a lot of that just sitting at a desk. Right. Yeah. Which could be that's a struggle for me. I'm not a person who can just sit at a desk. And so I think, I like to read, but even when I read, I got to like get up and move around. So I can read for like 20 minutes and I got to get up and move around because I'm just like too stir crazy. And so what the brewery has really been great for is it helps me use that other part of my brain that really likes the building and making and, producing. Whereas, with a PhD and as a job as a professor, a lot of that's teaching and thinking and research, which is just a very different part of my brain. And in fact, there are times where I can be focused on brewery stuff all day and I'm tired of that. And I go work on the academic side and I'm totally fine to go back and just shift gears. And like, I can do more work in that area because I've tired out, one part of my brain and I'm working on something else with this other part. So I find that's really rewarding to be able to do both of those. It was a lot of work, I think, this first 6 months. And thankfully, a lot of the routine we figured out a lot of routine between managing vendors and paying bills and all of that. So now I'm excited to go back in the fall. I was on sabbatical in the spring, did a lot of research, if anyone at the USD is listening. But now that I'll be back in the fall full-time teaching again, I'm really excited to be back to that part of it because I really enjoy it. But the break was really good, and being able to focus on the brewery side has been really, really exciting and enjoyable.
That's cool. Is there anything like any events you guys are planning? Because one thing I've seen it's different is I've heard you guys have yoga.
Yeah. So Saturday morning, Hannah Delang leads yogas. I don't remember the next one is. I think it's maybe July. I'm not the right person to ask calendar events. Katie's organizing South Dakota Martini Festival, which is coming up in July, which is South Dakota Martini it's kind of a joke. It's like a beer with either pickle juice or olive juice or tomato juice in it. Is a South Dakota Martini. I don't know why that's called that. So we're doing a whole series of beers around this idea of sort of those flavors and beers, which I really like. And then we are planning some Oktoberfest events. So we have sort of a beer garden in the back. And so we're planning an Oktoberfest. So we actually have that beer fermenting already, an Oktoberfest beer. So that we have to start that early because lagers take a while, and so we're planning ahead in advance to do Oktoberfest events.
And D-Days?
Yeah, D-Days is we don't have anything special planned for D-Days, I don't think. I think one of D-Days is one of those things where it's much more reactive than proactive. Like people just come, and Vermillion is crazy, and you survive that week, and then you move on to the next thing. So I'm excited for D-Days. We missed D-Days in 2023, our opening, by about a month, which we were really sad about. So we're excited for 2024 to be our first D-Days. And honestly, the first weekend you open, you probably shouldn't be D-Days because, it would be nuts. And if something were going wrong or we're having trouble with something, that's not a good week to have to shut down. So hopefully within about 11 months in, we'll have the kinks all worked out and, everything will be smooth. It's been smooth so far, but I mean, hopefully by then we're not. Yeah.
Okay. And one thing that I like, because I haven't seen it, I was like, man, I wish, we've been here like 4 years about more like food options in Vermillion, which some of the restaurants are cool. I like the food, but there always been like a lack of like food trucks, and then it started coming. But you guys are hosting now.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's kind of two types of people in the world: people who have the same meal over and over again and the same beer over and over again, and then people who like variety.
Yeah.
And it's fine whichever one you are, right? But I think the nice thing about a brewery is that inherently there's variety here because we're constantly brewing new beers. So if you want variety in your beer and you want variety in your food, like it's a great combination of things because we'll have different types of food styles of food trucks. And we had a fish, and some of the food trucks even do variety in their own food. So one of the trucks we had recently was doing some barbecue stuff, then switched to doing some fish.
That then.
Yeah, I know. So Lazy Susan's has done a few different types of food, and then some specialize in one thing, and they'll come back and do that same thing. So it just provides a more variety. Now we have sort of a catering. We have a future kitchen spot in the corner of the brewery, but both ran out of time to do that, and so we're kind of just slowly getting that into shape. And so hopefully, eventually, when we do more catering, like an in-place food truck is kind of the idea we've had. Yeah. So we'll have a walk-up window, and you can order, from there. So
because I know a lot of people were asking us, they're like, hey, because if some people know, me and my wife, we make tacos, we make food. They're like, hey, you gonna be at the brewery? And then, I kept saying, I don't know, maybe, we don't know. They're still doing their stuff. Yeah. So because I know Myra, I love making the food, but it's very tiring, all the prep. So she's all like, hey, this summer we could just tone it down. So
yeah. No, I mean, that's the nice thing is one of the things I'm excited about is that if people want to try to see whether this is a thing they might want to do, I think we're going to be a good place for people to experiment. The thing we don't have right now, which we really need, is a commercial kitchen. And that's for anyone who's ever built a commercial kitchen before, it is a real process. It's not like putting in a home kitchen. It is it's very different. And so our space is going to be eventually a commercial kitchen, but it's not there yet. And so that's kind of a future plan for us. But for us, it's, we want to focus on the beer first. And so a lot of the decisions we've been making in terms of what do we invest in next have been about the space as a brewery. So we had to get more kegs. We had to buy more outdoor seating. We're probably going to get another fermenter here soon, or another what's called a bright tank here soon, another tank back there. And so those are kind of the things we're focusing on first. And then once we get situated there, we feel like we're comfortable there. Then the next step will be the kitchen side of it.
How was the football games? Did you guys
really good? So again, we missed everything, I think, except for the FCS playoff game. So I don't know if we had any regular home games. My memory's a little hazy there, but so the FCS football games were great. There's a lot of people who came to town for those playoff games. Attendance was really good. And so, but the thing is, we had open for like 2 or 3 weeks. And so the question is, did anyone even know we existed? Later on, I talked to people like, oh, I didn't know you guys were there. Well, when I was in town for the playoff game, I would have come, but I didn't know you existed. And so it's a thing where, over time, people learn more and more that even your existence, but.
Okay. No, but this year, you guys, this is what I think, because it's a great, every town should have like a brewery, but you guys are very different. But it's because also I haven't been to too many breweries, but I like the yoga thing. Surprised me because when I heard about it, I was like, oh, is that a type of special drink? And then I was like, oh no, it's like actual.
It's just yoga. Yeah. Every brewery is different. I mean, I think my thought is that we really wanted to make this part of the community space. Well, Katie and I are involved, and my wife Leslie are really involved in the community in various different ways, or at the university. And I think the biggest thing we needed is we wanted like a big blank palette kind of space where you can do all sorts of different events. And We've got we've got some more windows, we've got some more lighting, it's more sort of natural brightness here. I mean, I think we have the lights on now, but I wouldn't even know, right? Because it's the natural, and it's even overcast today, and it's still pretty naturally bright in here. And I think the biggest thing we want is we want a space where we can do those sort of events. We have a nice outdoor space where we can do events. We have indoor space where we can have events. I think that's the biggest thing that we wanted to sort of do to be able to have a space that does that. Every brewery again is different. There are some breweries that are like a hole in the wall. It's like it's a tiny little building, but the brewery space is big, and they focus on sending beers out to different places. There are some that there's one just down the road from us that's essentially in a barn and has an outdoor patio space. So they focus a lot on summer patio space. It just really depends on what you want to be. And I think for us, we were so tied to the idea of this brewery as being a community space that the beer is really just a way to get people to the community space, right? More than anything else. And I think we just, in our Good Beer, Better Company logo came from the idea that we wanted like a space, like it's a good place to have company, to chat. We don't have loud music here. We're not going to probably do pinball. We're not going to do video lottery machines. We're not going to do television. We're probably not going to do any games. I mean, I like to watch that kind of stuff, and I appreciate going to the other bars in Vermillion that have the game on when it's on, and I want to watch it. But that's not what we're going to be. We're a place to have a conversation, play a board game, that's sort of quieter.
Nice, calm.
Yeah, right.
You get to talk to people.
Yeah.
Now, you guys got future plans like, hey, maybe we should open up another brewery in here, or?
No, I mean, I think I am busy enough with keeping this going at 7 months in that you can maybe ask me that in like 3 or 4 years, and maybe I'll have different ideas. But right now, no, the idea is to stop leaks from happening in this building. That's my big, yeah. Every once in a while, every time it rains in a particular way, we find a new, so we're in what used to be Fullerton Lumber and then became Mead Lumber. And this is an older style metal building. It's really cool and great. But I don't know when it was built exactly. I could never really track that down, but I think it was like in the late 70s, early 80s or something. So it's just getting to that age where, 50 years in, it's, it has its quirks. And then we did a lot of construction to it. So that on top of that, we added more issues, like maybe we didn't seal something going out to the roof very well. And so that leaks a little bit. And so it's really like just kind of tracking down all those problems and getting those situated, and then we'll move on to some more further expansion. My big project, and part of the reason you and I tried to have this conversation almost a month ago, my big project the last month or two has been getting the outdoor patio going. So I built planter boxes, I tried to do some string lighting, getting it cleaned and, swept really well. I mean, that was just a lot of work.
It looks nice too, that patio.
Yeah. I mean, we spent a lot of time, getting that, in shape the way it needs to be. And so that was sort of the big priority, and that's been keeping me busy. And like I said, the first year, anyone who starts a business, the first year is just kind of nuts. Like you're just constantly trying to keep your head above water because you're dealing with new vendors, new situations, new problems, things that you buy that are brand new break because they came out of the manufacturer faulty. We bought a lot of our equipment used, so some of those things are breaking. So you got to call and then hopefully a few years in, there's more routine. And then we're trying to do all new things like the patio. So it's been an interesting first year for sure.
No, that's sweet. I'm excited for y'all in the future.
Yeah.
Now, another thing, jumping into a different topic at the university. So I don't know too much about it, but I know you guys work at the political science department.
Yep.
But how does that work? Like, what do you teach or do?
Yes. So I'm actually I'm the coordinator of the public administration program. So I actually teach a lot of students. So I focus on statistics and research methods and public budgeting and finance. So many of our students go out and become like city managers. So Elk Point city manager is a recent student of ours. Flandreau, for those people who are in that area, a student of ours. Watertown went through our online program. And we have an intern every year or two in the city of Vermillion. The assistant city manager of Vermillion is one of our former students. So yeah, we teach city managers and other state and local employees in the department. So it's great. It's a great. I like the program because it really gives students like here's your career, right? And you go off and then they get jobs in that career. And we've had, especially students from South Dakota who want to stay in South Dakota, we found that it's a 2-year program, and in their last semester, they're like, I don't know if I'm going to find a job. I'm going to start applying for jobs in January. And then by February, they have a full-time job, right? And they're like, well, what can I do? I still have my last semester left. Like, what am I doing? And so we have to sort of accommodate students who have to go start a full-time job, which is a great problem to have, right? Our students are out there getting jobs. And so, yeah, I focus a lot on state and local finance and stats and research methods. So I'll do, my expertise, and I was doing an interview with somebody about both grocery tax and then some property tax changes in the state. So I kind of keep track of those things, those changes going on in the state, because that's sort of my area of expertise. But it's which is an interesting position to have, because that's not necessarily what you think. The guy who runs the brewery, that's what they're also doing, just keeping track of like state sales tax changes and property tax changes. But yeah, that's the other part of my brain working.
But that is important. What do you think about the sales tax thing? Should they have it or not?
So it's funny. Yeah, we're gonna do a forum with Ray Ring here in the next month or so. Hopefully we'll announce that. But I think Ray is on the side that we should have a grocery tax exemption. I'm on the side that we probably shouldn't have a grocery tax exemption. It's mostly because it just makes the tax code more complicated. I think people who don't like South Dakota's tax structure say it's regressive, meaning that people who are lower income pay a higher percentage of their income in taxes than people who have high incomes, which seems kind of backwards the way it should be. And it's true. South Dakota has a fairly regressive tax system. But there are ways to remedy that, but maybe the way to remedy that is not to just make the taxes more complicated for businesses who have to decide whether something is a grocery or not. So we even have the situation here, which is like, what is a prepared food or what is not prepared food? Like if I sell pretzels here, right? Well, pretzels at the grocery store are going to be sales tax exempt. If I sell pretzels here at the brewery, is that sales tax exempt, or should I be paying sales tax on that? And the answer is probably it's going to be, you have to pay sales tax on it, but there's really no difference between a bag of pretzels at the grocery store and a bag of pretzels at the brewery, except for the fact that the way that they'd be treated by taxes. And so that the disproportionate effect of the taxes wherever you buy it is part of the reason why I think that we probably shouldn't get rid of it. There are remedies. I think people really do feel like the bite of grocery bills going up has been hard, and so there are probably better ways to do it. For example, you could do a tax credit or a rebate to anyone who is full-time residents of South Dakota. Because of course, if you come to South Dakota and you're just visiting, right, you're out in the Black Hills and you go to the grocery store to get stock up for the week, that food would also be tax exempt, even though they don't live in South Dakota. So we would be giving a tax subsidy to people who live outside the state. So one of the ways that you could get around that is simply subsidizing people who live in the state. The other reason is that the way that the initiative is structured, it's going to be really hard, because and I think the grocery tax exemption is going to pass. So when that passes, I was one of the people who tried to put together a score for like how much is that going to cost the state, and it's really hard to do. It's somewhere between like $80 and $120 million, and I have or $60 to $120 million. Right. We have no idea because the businesses don't report data is such a fine detail that you can actually figure out how much of it is prepared food versus groceries. So it might have a real negative effect on the state's budget. So that could be kind of hard if we have to cut services.
Would they increase the property taxes or?
Nah. Yeah, so the state government doesn't actually collect any property taxes. All the property taxes go to local governments. The state relies primarily on the sales tax, which last year they lowered from 4.5 to 4.2%.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, but in order to increase taxes from 4.2 to 4.5%, if they had to do that, it requires a 2/3 majority vote to do that. So cutting taxes only requires a simple majority, but raising taxes requires a supermajority in the state. And I don't think you'll get a supermajority to raise taxes. And so the question is, what are you cutting if you lose, $60 to $120 million in taxes? And the answer is maybe education, maybe USD, maybe, I don't know what it is, right? Yeah, not entirely USD, but I mean the part of the budget. Right?
Yeah.
What gets cut? And I'm sort of just nervous about what that would be because that could be my department, right? So yeah, that's my concern with it. It's also, there's other issues. There's some weird drafting. It's not written very well. And so there will be some lawsuits about what the actual initiative means. So I'm opposed to the particular initiative, and I'm also opposed generally to grocery tax, generally probably, but like it's not a clear-cut decision. Like I'm not totally against it. It's just that on balance, I'd rather they try to adjust, groceries and, the burden of grocery taxes or the regressivity of South Dakota's tax code in some other way.
Never thought about running for like city government or state government?
I don't think so. I don't think that's my thing. I enjoy one of the things I really value is the ability to try to, keep some neutrality in my position. I mean, I really like to, like, again, for the grocery tax thing, I don't want to really take a position or have a position on it, but I want to be able to say, here are the pros and here are the cons, right? And be able to use that as a way to, talk to other people about ways to do that. I find that role to be probably more valuable than running for something, just personally. And, I don't know if you know this, but as a state employee, you're not allowed to run for the state legislature because...
Oh, I didn't know that?
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, so part of the reason you don't have any USD employees in the state legislature, Chris is technically a nonprofit, is because you can't, as a state employee, run for state office. So, yeah, so I wouldn't be able to even if I wanted to.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
Yeah. When Jim Abbott, who was the president of USD, ran for governor, he had to take a leave of absence from USD to run for governor of the state, so you could not be president of the university and run for governor at the same time.
Okay, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Hey, but speaking of Vermillion, we were just kind of chatting about it. Why do you think Vermillion's so small?
Yeah, I find the framing of that question really funny, because you're like, oh man, it's really small, and you're from Dallas Fort Worth. I was listening to your, and that's very large. I think Vermillion is the right size if it wants to be the right size. No, I think there are a lot of interesting. It's to me, there's a word called path dependence, which basically is like the way things used to be are the reasons why why they are now. So like Vermillion, for a lot of it is that when the dam got put in, it got put in Yankton, right? So we don't have the recreation that Yankton has. That's part of the reason. When the interstate came by, they went up to Sioux Falls and they skipped Vermillion, right? They did, if you look at the map of where the Interstate 90 or Interstate 29 goes, you look at the map in South Dakota, it like jaunts over to Watertown. So I grew up in Watertown. And so that was because when the state legislature was deciding where the interstate goes, there was very powerful politicians from Watertown who got the interstate to go over to Watertown on its way up. And if not for those powerful politicians, it would have gone through Millbank. If you look at it like a straight line, it should really go through Millbank, South Dakota. So Millbank is a town you've probably never heard of. Yep, but Watertown you have. And that's because when we built the interstate went over and connected with Watertown.
Okay.
But the interstate didn't come all the way over to Vermillion. So that's part of it too. We're not on the interstate. We have the rail line, right? But there are larger rail terminals. Sioux City was a very large rail terminal. And so Vermillion wasn't far enough away to really justify a larger rail terminal here. So there's a lot of reasons why Vermillion historically is relatively small. So now why are we small now? It's growing pretty fast. I like to look at demographics. I'm one of those nerds on Wikipedia looking at the demographics of counties and cities. And so I was just looking at Hutchinson County the other day, which is, I used to work, I lived in Vermillion, but I would drive to Hutchinson County all the time. So it's like basically just a little north of Yankton, essentially. And I think in 1980, it was like 13,000 people, and now it's like 8,000 people in that county. So it's shrunk. So why hasn't Vermillion shrunk? I think partly the university, right? Partly we are close enough to the interstate. We're in the southern tip of the state. So we're, if there's a warm part of the state, this is it. I know you're like, winters for you are like brutal, but
this is the warmest.
Yeah, we're the Miami of South Dakota. Have you not heard? I grew up in Watertown, though. This feels warm to me. All things, Watertown has like a month more of winter, I feel like, than Vermillion does.
Man, I don't know. I don't know if it's like 70 or 80 degrees, but I was wearing my jacket.
Yeah, well, I'm in t-shirt and shorts because it's warm to me. Okay. And anyway, so I find it to be interesting. And some of the current restrictions and growth in Vermillion are really quirky in the sense that there's people who own land around Vermillion who are a little bit older. And so because of the way, again, I care about taxes, the way the tax code works is if they sell the land to somebody to develop, they have to pay what's called capital gains tax. They have to pay taxes on the increase of the value of the land from when they bought it. They may have bought it in 1960, and so it was worth, pennies. But if they pass away and and their children inherit that land, they get what's called step-up basis of capital gains, and so they no longer have to pay capital gains tax on that. So what I'm expecting will happen is we'll have some people who will sell the land when that land gets passed on to their children because they'll avoid a very large federal income tax bill. Okay. I know. So there's some everything is ruled by property values and taxes is sort of my mantra. And so there's some odd quirks. So you see some more infill in Vermillion. So you'll see a lot of sixplexes. So we've had some houses torn down, apartments built, especially around campus. And part of the reason that infill is happening is for the reason of land ownership, kind of circling around the city and converting ag land to residential land.
Okay. So that's weird. That's really strange. So if I was like one of those older people and I bought land, let's say if I bought it for like super cheap, like $1,000 back then, and now let's say it's worth like, I don't know, 500,000, and I want to sell to the city, I have to pay the
the difference between what you bought it for. So $490,000 of that will be subject to the capital gains tax, which is on its own tax structure. I think long-term capital gains, I want to say, it changed, and I always forget whether it's 15 or 25%, but it's somewhere in that neighborhood. You would pay, to the federal government 15 to 25% of that difference in the gain in the capital. Now, if you wait and then you pass away and you give it to your kid,
Okay.
then the kid what happens is this step-up basis of capital gains means that they reevaluate the land at the date that you died. So it would be like $500,000 again, or they would pay no capital gains on that. So they would get that tax-free. So
that is okay.
Yeah. So it creates some very odd incentives for buying and selling land and houses in particular.
Mm-hmm.
There are some odd incentives that come around because of that.
Now, what do you think about everyone's talked about it. Every person I always ask, there's always like a housing crisis shortage. But, I guess after COVID, prices went up. And then people are like, well, we need more affordable housing. But now that you think about it, what is affordable now?
Yeah, nothing's affordable now. Vermillion has a housing crisis, but I think it's no different than pretty much anywhere else I've heard. I mean, every friend that I have friends who do zoning and housing as their full-time job, and everywhere is sort of constrained by that. I think there's a lot of different reasons for that. There's zoning issues. That's not so relevant here in Vermillion, but there are certain places where you can only build single family detached homes. So it has to be a home that has a yard around it. Mm-hmm. It can't be attached to anything else. If you go over by the high school, there are townhomes. So, and in Bliss Point, there are homes that are connected to each other. Then you have multifamily housing, you have apartments. And so Vermillion has a lot of places that are zoned only for single family homes. Some of those maybe should be converted to multifamily homes, but sometimes when people try to build multifamily homes, like there was a recent over by Bliss Point, I was going to try to build a 6 or 8-plex or something apartment. The city council put a stop to that because of concerns of density of the housing. And so part of the issue is that people say no to new housing, right? So you have a housing crisis. Part of it is the actual materials have gone up in price. So wood has gone way up in price. That is a really weird, long story about beetles in Canada. Can explain the increase in timber prices. I don't want to get into that because that's a very weird, long story. It's a lot of materials. And so you'll see more, so you'll see a lot of the building materials gone up, and then labor has gone up as well. So I don't think the housing crisis is unique to Vermillion. And I think part of it is that people like the square footage, like the amount of space that individual lives in right now is like twice as much now than it was in 1970. So like individuals have twice as much space themselves as they used to. And partly that's just people's preferences for more space. So if you look at homes that were built in the 70s, bedrooms tend to be smaller, the whole building, the whole house itself is smaller. And now newer homes that are built tend to be larger in square footage. And it's just as people have gotten wealthier, there's preference for larger homes have gone up as well. So there's that part of it too.
So, all right, Ed, let's say you were I can't say mayor. Let's say you were the dictator or something of Vermillion, or you can do whatever you want. Now,
I would do nothing different, everything.
How would you, or you had more control, how would you grow Vermillion? Legally.
No, I don't. Look, I don't think there's any magic wand for anything that anyone can do to grow Vermillion. I think there's going to be a natural. I mean, we grew 10% between two census. So again, between the census, we grew 10%. That's pretty good you see every once in a while you'll get like a suburb in Texas that'll double in size over 10 years, right? But they're usually because they're attached to Dallas, Fort Worth, or Houston or something, right? Vermillion's kind of on its own and out here in this island. And so you're just never going to grow quite that fast. I think healthy, sustainable, medium-term growth is really what you need, and I think that's what the path that Vermillion is on. I think South Dakota is growing quite a bit, and we see a lot more benefits from Sioux Falls growing. So because there's more amenities in Sioux Falls, I think Vermillion is a nicer community to live because of our proximity to Sioux Falls and even Sioux City. So I think we'll continue to grow. I don't think there's any single thing that can be done to grow. I think saying yes to businesses and saying yes to apartments and saying yes to new housing is an important part of how that will work, but other than that, I think good, steady, decisions. And I think we're doing what we need to do.
Yeah. Cause my view has changed. It's been going like back and forth, and I gotta change it differently because I'm from Texas, bigger area. So I'm like, okay, this is small town stuff. Let me try to think like them. But also, cause I know me and my wife, we talk about it. And I'm like, man, I wish because we always go to Sioux City for our groceries,
Right.
or like Sioux Falls for some stuff.
Yeah, you've got some special. You're looking very special,
Yeah, I
food too.
can't find my Hispanic Mexican
Yeah,
here.
right. Yeah.
But then I'll be like, man, I wish it was over here. But then Myra will be like, well, the good thing is like it's not that far. You just go to Sioux City. When you go somewhere, go to Sioux Falls. Maybe like if you want to go for some adventure, Omaha. But then we come back and it's a small, nice, for me, it's safe town.
Mm-hmm.
So do we want it huge like Sioux Falls? I don't think we want like a giant city.
Yeah.
Maybe some more stuff. Well, speaking of that, is there stuff that you would want or actually need in town or something?
Yeah, let me a couple things in there. Like one, I feel the same way. We're like, oh, it's Sioux City. It seems so far. It's a different city. But even when I lived in Bloomington, Indiana, if I wanted to go to like a specific kind of place, I'd have to go all around town, all the way around town. I lived on the north side of town. So if I wanted to get on the south side of town, it was like a 25-minute drive. Well, it's like halfway to Sioux, because I'm only going like 30 miles an hour. I'm hitting every stoplight or whatever. I'm like, Sioux City is like 45 minutes away because I'm going 80 most of the time. So it just seems, it's just relative, and the other part is, when we first looked at moving to, so I was on the academic job market. I grew up in Watertown. I did my undergraduate here, and then when I got my PhD at IU, I was on the academic job market. I'm looking at jobs, and I had like interviews, I think in like North Carolina, Georgia. We were looking at these various places, and then the position at USD opened up and happened to fit really well with what I do, and so we ended up with this job here. And what I told my wife is, I think you will really like it here in Vermillion. She also said this is the smallest place she would ever live, had ever lived, and was kind of worried about the fact that it doesn't have like a Target or something. and I just said, look, you're going to get really involved. And she said, always gets involved in things. You're going to get really involved. You're going to meet people who you really like, and you're going to like the community because it's a community where you feel like you can see your impact on the community, right? Things that you do shape that community for a long time. And I think when you're in larger cities, that can be the case, but it just feels like there's more, maybe it feels more out of your control or more, like there's a lot more forces going on in larger cities that are harder to participate in sometimes. And so I think the ability to really get involved in Vermillion is something I think has worked really well. In terms of what I would really want here, I can't think of my wife had said she wanted like a Thai restaurant or a sushi restaurant. Those things would be great too. But knowing how much effort it was to start the brewery and the coffee shop and the ice cream shop, for all of it, it's not something I'm going to do. I'm not as passionate about the food. I'm very passionate about craft beer, but food, maybe I don't have as much skill set in that. So, but happy to do that. But no, there are pros and cons to living in smaller towns. I really like Vermillion as a community. I don't care if it shrinks or grows. I just really like Vermillion as a community. And so I'm happy with where we are, and we'll get more accommodations. I was around when Walmart came to town, and like people were very upset about it or very happy about it. There's like, no, you had one opinion or the other, and now it's just a thing that's been around for a while. So yeah, I don't know. It's it changes. Things changes natural.
Okay, so I saw you around when that happened with the.
Yeah, I don't remember.
It was here the whole entire time.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Yeah, Vermillion did not come fully formed with a Walmart in tow. It feels like the Upper Midwest is that way, but no, that's the way. I don't remember what year it was. I think it was when I was in college or around the 2000 or something. Maybe I don't think it was here when I first came here to college. So in 2001, but I think at some point while I was in college it opened. So it's somewhere in that time period. So yeah, I remember. It was, people had very strong opinions about Walmart. It was a fun time.
And Hy-Vee did that come after too?
Hy-Vee was always there.
Okay.
Not always, but it's there when I first came to Vermillion in 2001. Look, if you saw Vermillion in 2001, when I came here as a student, it's very different. Downtown at the time, there's a transition period for a lot of these small communities where like strip malls became a thing, where out on Cherry Street, right, you have the strip malls, and so you have more of those sort of the quick buildings, maybe metal siding, those all came in, and then downtown really struggled, right? A lot of retail spaces downtown struggled. So a lot of vacant, downtown businesses for a long time. And what has happened over the last 20 years is that's almost completely reversed. We have empty strip mall, over by Walmart, right? You have some that are under size on Cherry Street, but we have downtown that's almost completely full. And why that flip happened, I don't really know, right? I don't have a sense of why. And that's not just a Vermillion thing. That's like around the country thing, a lot of smaller towns. But it's just a way, these communities change, right? Things expand in one area for a while, and then we kind of, our footprint back downtown reestablishes. And now downtown is much more restaurants and bars and other, sort of light retail. Murph's is the only place left that is really like what used to be downtown, which is a lot of appliance and hardware stores and things like that. And we're in an old lumber company, right? Imagine like a downtown lumber yard is, very rare nowadays. And part of the reason that's no longer a lumber yard is because a lot of lumber yards now are located out on outskirts of town where property values are a little lower.
Wow, that is fascinating. I need to look into the history of Vermillion. That's kind of cool.
There's some good books. Clay County Historic Preservation Commission has a bunch of books that has also great pictures of Vermillion. I was one of the people who helped form the Vermillion Historic Preservation Commission. So there's a few. We're newer, so there's not as many publications out there. But yeah, between Jim Stone and Evelyn Schlenker and Jim Wilson and others, they've published all sorts of great. I'm missing people who I should be, but they published all sorts of really fascinating histories of Vermillion. And it's worth going back and look at some old pictures of Vermillion. It just, some things the downtown looks exactly the same, and some things look very, very different.
Okay, I'm excited. I need to check that out.
Yeah.
Now, so we're running out of time, but I'll give you the last word. Is there any like shout outs or anything you want to tell people? Well, besides that, the brewery is amazing. I think people should come if they haven't. I think everyone's came here so far.
Yeah, everyone's been here. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's funny. It seems like every week or so I have somebody, if I'm here, somebody will say, "Oh, I've not been in yet," and a lot of times I live in Vermillion and just haven't made it down yet. So 7 months seems like forever to me, but I know for people who are just out and about, right? 7 months is a blink of the eye for people in Vermillion. No, it's really been a fantastic experience. I mean, people have been really, really supportive. Just people who have planned events here, birthday parties, whatever. It's been great to have everyone here and been really complimentary and very honest about the beer too. I mean, if they don't like something, we love to hear that feedback because we want to keep getting better as well. We want to improve our process and our quality. But yeah, and we're just getting to the point where we're starting to distribute. So start seeing us in Watertown and Aberdeen and Sioux Falls starting this week. And so we're excited for the future growth or the next steps for the brewery.
Sweet. All right. Well, I want to thank you, Ed, for being on.
Yeah, thanks, Jose. Appreciate it.